Welcome to the Inner Self Confidence Podcast. I'm your host, Katie Delamont. Real talk for women who are done overthinking, freezing, or abandoning themselves. If you are ready to feel calm in your body, trust yourself, and speak up without forcing it, you're in the right place. Because confidence isn't something you perform, it's something you build from the inside out. Let's go. Welcome to episode 43 of the Inner Self Confidence Podcast. What if healing matters more than punishment? Restorative Justice with Marlee Liss. Today, the powerhouse Marlee Liss, who is a somatic educator and founder of Survivors for Justice Reform, is joining me. Her groundbreaking restorative justice case helps change conversations around trauma and sexual assault, not only in America, but the world. This is a powerful conversation about survival, nervous system healing, justice, shame, post-traumatic growth, and what it really means to reclaim yourself after trauma. Let's jump right in. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on, Marlee.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, well, I'm going to jump right into it. I would love for you to tell my guests who you are, what you do, and why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, thank you. I'll start with the fun thing. So I'm a Sagittarius. I'm a dog mom. I live in Toronto. I'm a queer person. I'm obsessed with my partner. Talk about her as much as I can. But like in a healthy way, I think. And I'm a dancer. I do all kinds of things. And then my background's in social work, somatic healing. I used to teach yoga as well. But what really makes me passionate about the work I'm doing is lived experience. And I can definitely share more about what that's actually looked like. But it's brought me to a place where my full time work is advocating, speaking, and writing on reimagining justice for sexual violence.
Yes, yes. Let's get into it. So, you don't have to go into all of your story, but a bit of what happened and the journey getting to where you're at now.
Yeah, so when I was in college, I was 21 years old, I ended up experiencing rape. And I did not know what to do after that in my state of like crisis and shock and everything. I literally Googled, what do you do? And started going through the motions. And that led me to do a rape kit at the hospital. And then that led to a nurse asking me, do you want to report or do you just want to go home? And because I thought those were my only options, I ended up reporting. And I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. And for the next 3 years, I went through this court process that, like many of us know through our own experience or people we love or even the media, like it was really re-traumatizing. It was really um the opposite of healing.
Mm.
Like it really just kept showing me as I was trying to do this therapy work and healing around, my voice does matter, my right to boundaries does matter. At the same time, I was going through this big system that was telling me, even if you're uncomfortable, you have to push through because we need you to do XYZ on the stand. And if you don't do that, you could actually get in trouble. So
Yeah.
it was really confusing to try and heal and navigate that. And so by the time I was subpoenaed for the criminal trial, it had been 3 years. And my very first thought was, I don't want to do this. Like, this is way too painful for myself. And I started thinking, like, there's got to be another way. There's got to be another path to justice beyond this or nothing at all. And I started doing my own research and learned about restorative justice. And when I read about it, I was just completely mind blown because it was describing everything that I'd actually been needing for the past several years, like having him take accountability, doing deep work so he doesn't do this again, having a process where I can be really raw and emotional and authentic and ask the questions I have and get some answers. And so I started fighting for that outcome. And really, thanks to one prosecutor, it happened, and it became one of the first cases in North America for sexual assault to end with restorative justice through the courts. So it's been done outside of the courts for a long time, but in this way, it hadn't really been done. And it just blew my mind how healing it was. It was like a complete 180 where the courtroom was so suffocating and painful. The restorative process was so deeply caring and consensual and humane and focused on what do you actually need? You are the person hurt. Let's really center that. And for me, that looked like my assailant doing therapy for 7 months and then us eventually meeting in this circle process. And what led to me doing the work I'm doing now was really that I was just, as I was going through it and being like, wow, this is night and day. I kept thinking, why did no one tell me about this? And
Yes,
why does like,
yes.
yeah, like, why does
This is
no
like
survivor?
it literally, why does not I am pretty well informed person, and I've had sexual trauma and abuse happen to me as a child and in my 20s, and I had no clue about this. Like, I
Yeah.
randomly found you on Instagram. I'm like, how the fuck do I not know about this? And why does not, and like this, I'm so glad you're doing this work because so many people need to know about this. And it is I mean, I personally think it's the best way. I don't know anybody who has gone through the court system who actually said, "Oh, well, that was such an amazing process." Like nobody ever.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
can you, I know restorative justice is it probably looks different for everybody as well. That's the whole point. It's probably, your own journey. But can you tell us what it is, the foundations, what makes it so different? And yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that because it's really like that's what fueled me to keep doing this work ever since I had that experience was just all the survivors who reached out saying, "Why didn't no one tell me about this? I wish I had known about this when I was going through that." Like I just think the representation is so important. So we can make our own choices. And your choice might be that's not for me, and that's okay. But you
Hmm.
still have a right to know the option exists and then make a choice accordingly.
Yeah.
Um,
And I just want to interject here. Believe I saw you on an interview saying that if you don't opt for it, they actually they take the right away within 3 months or something.
I think you might be referencing in the Canadian Victim Bill of Rights,
Okay.
it says you have a right to information about restorative justice upon request. So there's this like I just think that's so wild. I in my upcoming book I wrote about this analogy where I'm like, imagine you have a peanut allergy and you go to a restaurant and you're like, "Hi, I have a peanut allergy. Do you have anything?" The only menu item I see is like sauteed peanut chicken. And you're like, "I can't have that." And they're just like, "Oh, that's too bad." But like they have a nut-free pasta dish in the kitchen. But in order for you to know about that, you have to specifically say, I would like information on your nut-free pasta dish. Like it's like, why are we
Mm,
using a password that people
yeah.
don't know to give them crucial information?
I mean, my theory is they want to keep us dysfunctional and sick, unfortunately, because
Mm,
this restorative justice is the way out of dysfunction, is the way to heal trauma.
mm-hmm.
And if people
Yes.
are healthy and happy, then we wouldn't need hospitals as much. We wouldn't be in wars. Like they wouldn't make any money,
Mm.
unfortunately.
Yeah,
So
especially in the States with like how much
yes,
people
the
profit off prison.
lawyers and prisons and also legal fees and like the whole system. It's just, yeah, look, that's going down a conspiracy rabbit hole. I'm not going there. But let's talk about restorative justice,
Yeah.
what it is, the foundations.
Yeah. So, for anyone who's never heard of it, the simplest definition is that it prioritizes healing over punishment. So, where the courtroom asks three questions, the three questions the courtroom asks are what law was broken, who broke it, and what punishment is warranted. Restorative justice asks a different three questions. Instead, it asks what happened, who was harmed, and what can be done to try and make things as right as possible or to try and help that person heal. So the focus isn't on you broke a law in the Constitution. The focus is on you're a human being who was hurt. What do you
Mm.
need? And so you're absolutely right that it's not a one size fits all, because the answer to those three questions is going to change based on who's in front of you and the details of what happened. And so it basically is a needs based approach. So if the person harmed, like me in that case, I said, I really want him to take accountability, and I really want him to do deep work to try and make sure he doesn't do this again. So, based on those needs that I named as the person hurt, a process was built around that. And for me, it looked like the circle, it looked like therapy. For other people, it can also look like volunteer work or letter exchanges or even surrogate circles where someone who caused similar harm, but a different person, meets with you in a circle and you have an exchange as well. And people have described that as really healing. So it can look many different ways. And the last thing I'll say about it for now is that it's not at all a new process. A lot of
Mm.
people have this idea that it's some like new fluffy thing that a bunch of woke hippies dreamed up. And it's like, no, actually, restorative justice existed way before the criminal legal system as we know it today existed.
Do you know its like background? It's when it originated?
Yeah, so it has many, many different lineages, because basically we're asking, how did communities handle harm and
Mm.
violence before
Before. Yeah.
colonization, before
Yeah.
the Brits came and said, this is how you do courtrooms, someone
In
should hold a
jails.
gavel, the judge should wear
You need
this.
a
Um,
white, fluffy George
you need a
Washington
white
wig.
fluffy. Exactly. You have to swear on the Bible before you take the stand, like before
Mm.
that became the norm, which really only happened about 187 years ago with the
Yeah.
British North America Act, pretty recent. Before that, communities had their own way of
Mm.
handling harm and violence. And so pretty much when you trace back any culture, you'll start to see some version of restorative justice. The ones we hear about the most and the ones that really influence some of these processes, like circles that happen today, would include like indigenous communities across Turtle
Mhm.
Island. The Maori people in what's known as New Zealand have a really
Mhm.
rich history. In Africa, we saw a lot of truth and reconciliation circles happening. Rabbis did this a lot in specific Jewish communities. In Mennonite and Celtic communities, we see a history. So, pretty much every culture at some point had their own way of doing justice, and it wasn't the courtroom.
Mhm. I mean, it was also sometimes public off with their heads.
Yeah,
So there
yeah.
was also very violent ways to deal with things too. Let's it's both sides of the story. But is there any place in the world where restorative justice is not allowed or doesn't exist? Have you come across that?
I would say it's not like an all or nothing. So the answer is yes and no for everywhere, because um
Like
restorative
life.
justice, yeah, like restorative justice is not at all controversial for like shoplifting for youth. You know what I mean? It's
Mm.
pretty easy for all of us to be like, oh, a 12-year-old who steals like a candy bar shouldn't go to jail. Like they deserve some like resources and therapy. We should figure out what's going on for them. So most of
Yeah.
us can wrap our heads around that. And for that reason, restorative justice is pretty widely available for youth, and for specific crimes that we would call like minor.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the more serious crimes, like I'm talking about sexual assault, that's where we see it's really, really varied. And even within countries and even within states, it's really, really varied.
Yeah, absolutely. And would they have restorative justice for murder cases or like drunk driving murders that like I can see that happening. Say somebody
Mhm.
was driving drunk and they killed somebody they loved. Like I could see a restorative justice happening in that
Right.
situation. So it can be done with any criminal charge, pretty
Yeah.
much.
And it again, it depends where. Like
Yes.
in
Yes, that's
where
true.
I am, for example, there's like policies that make it much more difficult to access the
Hmm.
more serious the crime is. But research actually shows that the more serious the crime is, the more effective restorative
Yeah.
justice is, which is really counter. But the key here, because I think we can get really fancy talking like policies and legislation, the law, but the key that I always want to bring people back to is just like, what does the
Human.
person who's been impacted really need? Because that's a great example. Say someone loses a family member to drunk driving, they
Hmm.
might just be like, they might be like, I really want the person who killed them to do like rehab, or I want
Yeah.
them to apologize, or I want them to like really deeply reflect on how I must feel, or I want them to do volunteer work. Like it
Yeah.
really depends on what the person, what's meaningful to them in terms of their own healing.
Yeah. And everybody's different. And it's such a beautiful way to just help communities. And because you're not only affecting the person, the victim, but it's also then affecting their family and their friends and their work colleagues, because like they're an energy field. So like it's really just, I don't know, I'm just blown away on how this is not talked about more. And um now, what do you think people misunderstand about, I guess, trauma, in this case, the sexual assault and the whole, I guess, process of it all and the impact of it all. And did you feel supported when you were going through everything?
What people misunderstand, I guess if I'm relating it to this, I think people assume that all survivors will feel vindicated and freed if the person who harmed them is also like abused or punished or harmed or killed. And there are people like that. Like that does exist. Like you said, it's important to recognize both sides. Like that exists. And I hear from survivors every single day. I've heard from thousands and thousands and thousands of survivors around the world who say things like, I just want to be believed, or I just want him to apologize or admit what he did, or I just want him to take time to learn about why this was wrong so he doesn't do it again, or I want him to get help because he has very serious like mental health or addiction issues, or like a lot of people want different things. And I think what happens a lot of the time is when we make the punishment so severe, when we assume that all victims want their abusers like murdered, what we end up doing is we silence a lot of victims, because any victim who says, well, I don't want the person who hurt me to be murdered, then they're going to stay silent because they're like, well, I know the mom's going to take over and do that anyway. And so it kind of backfires. And I think what we really need to do is, instead of having that impulsive, like, I care about you and therefore I'm going to kill your abuser, we need to actually center the survivor. And we need to realize it's not about us in that moment, it's about the survivor. And we need to listen and ask them, like, what do you need right now? What would make you feel really supported right now? What would help your healing right now? And having the respect and care to actually act on them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And do you find that a lot of survivors don't know what they want? And is there, so for you, if you want to talk about it, what was sort of the process for you during this of like trying to figure out what was healing for you? Like you said, there's so many different things that you can do. What did you choose and why did you choose it? Can you walk us through like how that was for you and how you found your own process of healing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a really big fan of being needs based, because I think it's
Mm.
absolutely unrealistic to imagine we like sit down with someone who was just assaulted and we go, what do you need? And they go, oh, I would like to pursue the criminal legal process in the hopes of incarceration, or I would like to pursue restorative justice in the hopes of, like, that's just not how humans work.
Yeah.
So to me, it's about really listening for the needs. And
Mhm.
pretty much with all survivors, we start to hear things like, I just want him to admit what he did, or like, I just
Mhm.
want my community to believe me, or I just want help, or I just need money to help me pay for therapy, or I just, we start to hear like the needs survivors have. And even if those aren't articulated perfectly, whatever that means, we can usually hear underneath the words that are being said, there's a need they're pointing towards. So like, again, I just want to be believed. I just want to be believed. It's like, what would that look like for you? And they're like, well, it would look like him admitting what he did, and my peers at school witnessing that so that they believe me as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
usually we can get somewhere by listening to those needs. um I think it can be really helpful to use 1% language. So instead of like, oh, like what would help, what would make you heal, because it's like
Mm.
that's like a
Yeah.
daunting question for someone in
Yeah.
crisis. But like, what would make you feel like 1% more safe going to school where this
And
happened, or
even just
whatever?
today, right now, not even like,
Mm-hmm.
in the next 5 to 10 years, okay, it's like what today, this week, like what, and it's going step by step. And that's the biggest thing. That's the healing for everything. It's starting off small, little bites of bravery, one foot in front of the other. And, starting with that one stair of the staircase. So for
Yeah.
you, what did that look like?
Yeah, it was exactly that. It was, for me, I almost picture it was like this like event where I lost so much. And then there was a long period where I was slowly realizing everything I lost. Like, oh,
Mm.
realizing, oh, this made me feel like my voice has no power. Oh, this made me feel like my boundaries don't matter. Oh, this made me feel like my body's against me. Oh, so like it was this long process of realizing the things that I'd lost or had been taken from me. And then when I started going deeper into healing, that sort of gave me direction around, well, what am I reclaiming, like what am I picking up? um so voice was a huge theme for me, because I remember like during the assault saying no and having this realization like this isn't doing anything, and
Mm.
feeling really like scared and weirded out by that, because I was just like, well, then what's the point of ever naming
Yep.
a boundary or a want if it's not going to be respected?
Yep.
And then going through a big system that kept reinforcing that.
Yep. Yep.
um so feeling that loss in such a big way showed me very loudly and very confronting this thing of like, wow, I feel really disconnected from my voice. And so when
Mm.
I started to learn about a justice pathway that actually centered my voice and said, what you need matters most, or this is a space for you to show up authentically and imperfectly and ask the questions you have and voice the impact without censoring yourself. To me, it was like, oh, this will help me pick up this piece again. So I think often, unfortunately, it's like the loss that points us toward what we need to reclaim.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is such a big point. And the whole having this belief that my voice doesn't matter. Well, if I speak up, it's not going to be heard or respected, or it's just going to make things worse. And then you have that reinforcing belief through the system. You're just going to obviously keep then minimizing and suppressing your voice. And this is what we see happen, not only in something big like this, but just people, men and women in relationships, at work, whatever the case is that suppression just keeps continuing because they don't show their nervous system a new environment where it says, actually, you can speak up. And even though it's really hard and uncomfortable, you're still able to do it in a safe place. And I guess it's
Mm-hmm.
that safe, that nervous. So did you start practicing yoga and get into somatics like while you were going through that 3 year process, or was it after?
It was actually before. I honestly would like skip a lot of my high school classes to go to yoga.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was kind of a mix. It was like honestly a mix of like curiosity about those things, but also like disordered eating because I was just like
Yeah.
obsessed with burning calories. But then as a result, I was like, oh, now I'm reading The Power of Now in grade 10. Like, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of like this interesting thing where I already knew about um yoga, and the summer before I went through this, I had actually been working on a women's meditation center, which again was just like I talk about this in my book a lot, but it was like a random series of events that led me to spend the whole summer on a women's meditation center, like working. Um, and then it was a week after I got home that this rape happened. So
Wow.
yeah, it's like this,
Yeah.
those universe things like where you're just
Mm.
like, oh wow, like
Yeah, one
um
extreme to the other. It was kind of like I went to a 10-day Vipassana and then I went straight to Burning Man after that. So, and then I
right,
remember
yeah.
one time I went to the full moon party in Thailand in Koh Phangan, and then I went to a meditation retreat. I was like, that's a bit yin and yang.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a big like um bubble burst because I honestly felt like I spent the summer living in like, if you've seen the Barbie movie, like I felt like I was living in Barbie land because it was just like
Yeah.
all these women healing together and supporting one another, and it felt so safe. And then I got home and it ended up being the exact opposite where I was like, raped a week later. Um but I think the beautiful part of it is that I did have some tools
Yeah.
already for
Yeah.
getting through it. And yet I still really, 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 really struggled and hit a very low rock bottom where I was like considering taking my life. And honestly, part of like knowing what I needed was just, I think we all have this moment, this like when our body is screaming at us, well, I can't do this. I think we can all, whether it's a toxic job or a toxic relationship, like for me, it was going through the courtroom and being asked again and again to violate my own boundaries and push through pain and like, you know, just like make myself vulnerable in a way I didn't want to be, like in with no support. Like it was just my body screaming, I can't do this anymore. And so
Mm,
that was enough for me to be like, well, is there another option then? And I think what's so important about that and the work you do is that you're empowering people to take that seriously. Because a
mm,
lot of us will gaslight ourselves. We'll go, well, I can't do this, but culture tells me this is what I'm supposed to do. So I guess I have to suck it up and push through.
and we
And I think,
normalize burnout. We
yeah,
normalize gaining weight. We normalize feeling sick. We normalize IBS. We just think all these symptoms, like, can I ask if you were having physical symptoms? Like, were you having IBS? Were you having flare-ups? Like, what was happening physically in your body? Because it was giving you signs, but we just
yeah. Oh,
normalize it.
exactly. I was losing my hair from stress. I had
Yep.
recurring UTIs for like
Yep.
ages. I kept getting recurring UTIs. I like didn't get my period for a bit. Um and I just, oh, and I'd break out in hives. That was the
Yep.
biggest one. That was
Yep.
the biggest one where, and it was so, it's not funny, but it's kind of funny. Like I didn't know that the body could feel
Talk
and
to you.
speak like that. And so the first time I had a panic attack and broke out in hives, I ran to I was like on my campus and I ran to like the health center and I was like, I'm having an anaphylactic reaction to something. And they were like, do you have any allergies? And I was like, no. And they were like, I think you're having a panic attack. And I was like, you guys are idiots. Like, no, this is much bigger than that. And then I realized, like, no, this is how big our emotions and trauma responses can be. We're just kind of taught that it's like either medical or emotional, you know?
hmm And I think also people, I know when I had my first panic attack, I thought it was like my breakup with my boyfriend at the time. What I didn't realize, what it was like all the childhood trauma and all this shit that I was in. It was like we think it's the surface level things so
Right.
often. Oh, it's my work. Oh, it's the kids. Oh, it's the external things that are very easy to blame on, but we don't want to actually take it inward and be like, okay, This is something a little bit deeper, and this is my stuff, not,
Yeah.
and so I love that you are very much into the somatic work because the body is always speaking to us, always, always,
Mhm.
always. And yeah, so I would love to go in a little bit about like more, because I know a lot of women and probably a lot of women who have listened to this podcast have experienced some sexual assault or sexual trauma themselves. Now, what do you think around sexual assault, the conversations that we still are not having enough? Is it the
Mhm.
choice when it comes to, I mean, or is it even talking about it? I think we're getting better at that.
Yeah. Um, a few directions we could go in. One is just like what I'm saying with justice is that you have options. Like
Mm,
we just don't, people just don't know that we have options. And we think our options are court or nothing. And
mm,
94% of us choose nothing.
yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay
Yeah.
if you genuinely don't want to pursue any kind of justice. And if it's because you don't know all your options and if you're still navigating unmet needs that can help you heal, then you deserve to know about those as well. And you're the person who went through this. What you need matters most. It doesn't matter what your dad or your friend or whoever or a guy on TV or some person in the Instagram comments thinks you should do. You're the one who went through this, and your healing matters, and your healing should be a catalyst, or your justice should be a catalyst for your healing. It should never be an obstacle. So I think also challenging that normalization, because I know so many people who have gone through the criminal legal system and have been, like, I don't want to say destroyed, but like have been really torn apart by it. Like it really like fucks us up, if I can say that. And it's
Yeah.
like that's not like that shouldn't just be, and then we go, well, that's just what you have to do to get justice. It's like, no, I'm personally not okay with us tearing survivors apart like that when we've already been through so much in the name of justice. Like I don't think any of us should be complacent with that.
Yeah. Again, we're normalizing dysfunction of justice equals completely burnt out. Like I've had a guest on and she was raped in childhood and then by I think maybe an uncle or somebody, a family member, and then didn't remember it until 30s. And then she went through the system in her 40s. And she said after, and I think she had a phone call with him. I think that's what it was. I don't know what it was, but she had gone through the system and she said after it was over, she slept for 4 days.
Wow.
And it's like, it's great that you're listening to your body, like that's what your body needed, but that's how exhausted you were, which again, why are we normalizing that as that's justice
Mm-hmm.
and that's just what happens. That's just
Yeah.
what's, and so I love that we can take this new spin on it. And I would love to hear how you were able, especially at such a young age. I mean, it happened when you were 21 and then 3 years. I mean, you're still under 25, basically. How did
Mm-hmm.
you really listen to yourself without the outside world? Because I know at me at that age, I mean, my friends were a very big influence. I thankfully didn't grow up with a lot of social media because I'm 40 years old now. But like, I just know how mean girls and boys can be, even in their 20s. So like, how did you really get to your own inner self-confidence? And that's what this podcast is like, how did you listen to
Mm-hmm.
you inside?
Yeah. Cool. Very cool question. I'm sure it was a of several factors, but what I think of most is like the work that I did after the sexual assault to try and heal
Mm,
was so much about consent in your own body. It was so much about like what feels like a yes, what feels like a no, and then trusting and valuing that enough to communicate it. Like, it was so much about like, you just had your boundaries violated in such a severe way, and you don't deserve to keep having your boundaries violated. And so I think I got to a point with my own case where I was like, if I get up on that stand again, it will be me continuing to violate my own boundaries for like hours and hours and hours. Like, it just felt like it would sort of reverse all the really hard like work and healing and recovery and learning I'd been doing. And I think I just hit a point where like, often I think a lot of us are like this, we're able to access empathy by thinking about other people. And I'm just like, would I want another survivor to do that? Like, if it felt that terrible for them, would I want them to do that? And it's like, no, obviously not. If my best friend went through this and came to me and was like, this is destroying me, and what I really need is this, I'd like to think I'd be like, well, what you need matters, and I don't want you to be further destroyed. So I
Yeah.
think that by thinking about what would someone I love and care about want, and then applying to myself of, well, I want to be someone I love and care about, right?
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
I want to respect my own boundaries like I'd respect my best friends. So I think it just became like, am I for or not for my own healing? And
Yeah.
I had done enough work to be like, you know what? It matters. And
Yeah,
so
it
I
fucking does.
acted accordingly.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I always say you have to be your own safety advocate. Nobody else is breathing for you. Unfortunately, nobody else can save you, keep you safe, like but you. And um, yeah, I mean, it's, again, it's a very simple thing to say, but I've been wondering what your lawyer said when you're like, hey, by the way, can we change our whole approach and go the restorative way? Like, I'm assuming you had a very supportive lawyer or team. And what was that like, that conversation?
So survivors going through the criminal legal system don't have a lawyer. Your assailant has a lawyer, a defense
Yeah.
lawyer, but this is part of my issue with court. Okay, it's not even about you. You're a witness in a crime done to the state. The technical court setup is the accused versus the state. So it's the prosecutor versus the accused, and you are just there as a witness to provide evidence. And that's why you don't have a lawyer, because you're just a witness. And it's why you don't really have very many rights or protections either. Um, so I have lots of beef with how the criminal legal system set up. So I didn't have a lawyer. I had a prosecutor who's representing
The state.
like the state. Yeah. So it was a very polarizing thing, because there was two prosecutors that were there when I asked for this, and one of them was like, hell no, that's not what
Mm-hmm.
justice is.
Yep.
And the other one was like, you know what, most cases end with re-traumatized victims and acquittals, or rapists reoffending, and I think we should consider doing something different. And so it really was thanks to that one supportive prosecutor that
Yep.
it ended up happening. But it was very polarized, and there was several months where they were going back and forth fighting for the case.
Yeah, and that's I wanted to, raise that because all of this is subjective. What somebody thinks is justice, we talk about this, somebody else thinks this is justice. And depending on that person, like you had two people who have been in the system who know these things, and they had two polarizing ideas about it. And now, if the prosecutor say they both agreed that no, justice is him going through the system, does that mean your own choice was not heard again and you had to do that?
Well, that
Oh,
happens a lot. That happens a
Jesus.
lot. I know so many survivors who, because to add to our court lesson, when you're subpoenaed as a witness, they then say, if you fail to show up to court, you
Yeah.
could be charged as a
Yeah.
non cooperative witness. So
Yeah.
consent's out the window. This is
Yeah.
part of what made me be like, this is ridiculous, because how
I
can
don't,
it be that
yeah.
survivors have no right to consent in a process where we're fighting for our right to consent? Like, that's when I
Y-
was just like, this doesn't make sense. So I know a lot of survivors who have had that, who have been basically forced to show up to court when that's not what they want.
mm,
That being said, people can still access restorative justice completely separate from the court system. So let's say that I never reported.
mm-hmm,
Um, if I the name of my memoir is If I Had Known Then.
mm,
If I had known then what I know now, I may have never gone to the police. I may have contacted
mm-hmm.
a local nonprofit that does restorative justice. And I do have a resource guide that provides a map of restorative justice organizations. I can send you the link for that, but it's just marleeliss.com/resource. Um, and then I would not have had those 3 years of re-victimization and a fight where I had less say in how things go because of what you're saying, like because of the prosecutors having that power.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. In like such an incredible and such an important conversation. I'm so glad you're bringing this to more of the world. Now, what I'll ask two more questions. What advice would you give to someone who's listening who might still be carrying, the shame? We didn't talk about it much, but like that shame is the biggest reason that keeps all of us, our voice shut. So, you know, if somebody's living with any kind of shame, whether it is sexual assault or something else, like what advice do you give around that experience?
Yeah, it's it's tricky because I'm trying to think beyond the generic, it's not
Mm,
your fault, but I think that really is what it comes back to. And I think that learning about, I guess, a more like creative response is like learning about the trauma responses that arise can
mm,
be a really important part of realizing it wasn't your fault. Like I feel like we're
nervous
all
system.
familiar with the thing of like fight response is admired, flight response is even admired, freeze response, fawn response, not admired. You know what I mean? So
No.
it's like taking the time to actually learn about those mechanisms of survival, like
Mhm.
recognizing them as mechanisms of survival and then seeing how they allowed you to get through that. um I think that's a really important part of healing because I know that's something you really focus on is like the freeze response, especially. And for me, I froze. And it took me a really long time to let go of the idea that, like, oh, maybe I wanted it because I stayed,
Mm,
like that kind
yeah.
of thing. And it wasn't until I really started to understand that somatic lens of like, that was my body's brilliant way of protecting me in that moment.
Yeah.
um, and it worked in that I'm still here. So
Exactly.
I think really understanding trauma responses from that lens of like the function of how they keep us alive, it can help us have some self compassion and let go of that self blame.
Yeah, the nervous system responses is so important. And I literally like so many light bulbs went off when I started learning more about it. And it is also fawn response. So trying not to make a situation worse or be that person, as a woman. So our fawn response is so deeply embedded into us and it not only freeze, but the shutdown. Like I know when I was assaulted, I definitely went into freeze and shut down, disassociate. And then it's the fawn of like, it's okay, it's fine. Just don't come near me again, but I'm okay, I'm okay. Yeah, when you're really not. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's such an excellent like go-to because I think people, again, we hear these things of like, oh, just be more compassionate to yourself. It's like, okay, but what does
Mhm.
that look like? And I think a lot of us do work more on that right brain of like analytical, like, well, if I can understand it, maybe then I can get more compassion
Mhm.
because you're not just like you can't create gratitude and compassion when you're feeling shit. You have
Yeah.
to like find ways in to embody it. It's not just going to arrive at your doorstep.
Yes. And I remember like calling a rape crisis center and them saying it's not your fault. And I was like, okay, but like you don't know. Like
Yeah.
it's very hard to believe them when you are carrying that shame. And so I think, yeah, exactly, understanding like those responses is so important.
Yeah. And most people, like you said, really only know about fight or flight. We think that's your stress response. And also our freeze, shutdown, and fawn is looked at as mature. It's looked at as also just that's what you do. And it's normalized again. It's not looked at as a stress response because you shut down.
Right.
Well, this is going to lead me to my last question before we let everybody know how to find you. But this is the Inner Self Confidence podcast, and I would love to hear what you think inner self confidence is, or how you would define it in your own perspective.
Inner self-confidence. I really like parts work, and like
Mm,
for anyone who doesn't know what that is, maybe you've seen Inside Out, and it's just like you have all these like little beings inside you. And I really think like inner self-confidence is just like caring about those little beings. Like just like consulting with them before you listen to all the external noise, right? Like that's what we're talking about here, is like the rest of the world may say this is what you should do, but if all the little beings in your body are saying like please 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 do this other thing, inner self-confidence is like having the ability to turn inward, listen, and care about what those little inner beings are saying.
yeah, absolutely. I love that. So perfect. Now, where, and your book is coming out next year, 2027?
Yes, in
Yay.
February. Yeah.
Awesome. And can you tell us the title again?
Yes, it is. I'll also tell you where you can find a fun thing. So the title is If I Had Known Then. What the subtitle is, I'm going to butcher it, A Memoir of Sexual Assault, Hope, and My Battle to Reimagine Justice. Okay, that is it. I nailed
Yeah.
it. And it comes out in February, and I do have pre-orders. Pre-orders aren't open yet, but I do have something on my website called First Wave, where you can sign up to be the first to know about pre-orders. And you also get 3 letters I wrote and recorded. One is to my 21-year-old self who had just been assaulted. One is to all the survivors who have ever written me. And one is to future readers. And they're really sweet, beautiful, emotional letters, if I do say so myself. So check them
Mm.
out. It's marleeliss.com/firstwave. Um, and then everything else about me is just my name, Marlee Liss, on Instagram, where I post way too much, so you can see. And my website's the same as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for your time, your wisdom, your expertise, and I cannot wait to see you keep rising and bringing this out more into the world.
Thank you. And thank you again for all of the work that you're doing and all of the people you're empowering too. I love your wording of like to not abandon themselves. I think that that's such beautiful and important work. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Marlee. Well, I look forward to connecting more.
Yes, me too.
Yay. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Inner Self Confidence Podcast. If you want to check out my wild ride from mindlessness to mindfulness, my best selling memoir, Trust the Flames, check out my book on either my website, www.katiedelma.com, or jump on Amazon. My book is sold anywhere they can sell books, digital or paperback. And if you want to work with me one to one, you can also jump on my website, check out what I do, my coaching, my nervous system reboot program. Or if you want to just jump on a free strategy call, all the links are on my website, www.katiedelmon.com. Or if you want to follow me on social media, all my handles are all the same, Katie Delamon. Till next time.